So, the next presentation is about the Nova Scotia Working Woodlands Trust, and this is an organization that's really growing and very exciting. A lot of stuff going on in a relatively short time. We have Mhari Lamarque, Land Trust Manager, to speak to us today. Mhari learned to love the outdoors when she was young by camping and exploring throughout Nova Scotia. In 2016, she completed her Master's in Resource and Environmental Management at Dalhousie University and proceeded to dive into agricultural biodiversity conservation work. She is a farmer and woodlot owner herself, growing vegetables and flowers on a small holding on the south shore of Nova Scotia. Mhari is delighted to join the forestry sector as the Land Trust Manager for the Nova Scotia Working Woodlands Trust. Welcome, Mhari.
Hi, everybody. Nice to having some things in my hands. Okay, so my name is Mhari. I'm the Land Trust Manager here at the Nova Scotia Working Woodlands Trust. I'm really delighted to be telling you a little bit about our organization and working forest easements today. So I'm going to just jump right in. This is okay. So the Nova Scotia Working Woodlands Trust was born from a collaborative initiative with the Medway Community Forest Cooperative. The NCFC, if you haven't heard, is a member-based, community-led social enterprise that manages a 15,000 hectare land, crown land license area in Annapolis County, just down the street, proverbially, from Keji. The NCFC pilots multi-valued, ecologically based forest management on this license area, and has always sought to have a connection with private land owners. So this is where the trust is really coming from. So a little bit about our organization, people-wise. We have 4 wonderful staff members, all of who are here today. We have Mary Jane Roger, who is our Executive Director, and also the Executive Director of the NCFC. Myself, I'm the Land Trust Manager. We have Sheila Nickerson and Ellen Riotel as well, Stewardship Coordinator and Outreach and Communications Coordinator. We're guided by a fabulous board of directors. I'm not going to list them all, but you can see that they represent both stewardship and conservation organizations, as well as we have director seats for private landowners as well, because they're a very important component of shaping this new and growing organization. So before diving into the kind of meat and potatoes of the organization and this presentation, I just want to mention the importance for both the trust and the NCFC of integrating Mi'kmaq values into our organizations. So we need to acknowledge that conservation and the conservation movement has historically created barriers for Indigenous peoples to access private lands. And we want to consider this when we talk about the future of private lands and private land stewardship. So we do this by integrating two-eyed seeing into both our management practices and our policy development. And we continue to partner and chat and keep an open dialogue with our Mi'kmaq partners. One of the ways that we're doing this is challenging the concept of the landowner. So you'll hear me say, instead of landowner, land steward. And this acknowledges that private lands may not have been legally ceded or sold to the settlers. So this is one way that we're trying to integrate Mi'kmaq values at the trust. We're continuously trying to build relationships, alleviate barriers, and have the hard conversations around conservation as it relates to private land stewardship. So, why build a Working Woodlands Trust? We understand that most woodland stewards in Nova Scotia are at the age or approaching retirement. And this means that there's going to be a huge intergenerational transfer of land assets to their kin properties entering into the market. So various scenarios can happen when land is changing hands. One could be that new owners are displaced from the forest, so they don't have a connection with their properties. So these are kind of displaced successors or kin. Current landowners may be forced to cut a large portion of their woodlots to actually pay for capital gains tax when they take on new property. Current landowners also could liquidate to help pay for retirement or any other large purchases. So working forest easements, as I'll get into, serve to protect the forest health and uphold stewardship legacies of properties and support a diversity of revenue generating opportunities. So in addition to risks associated with lands changing hands, common threats to forest and long-term forest health include land conversion. So this could be liquidation logging or clear cutting, which we know Leahy reports that nearly 90% of private land harvesting is clear cutting. Could be conversion to agriculture. Blueberries are a big one in this province. Land conversion in the form of subdivision is another huge piece, chopping up properties. Close to the lakes is often a hot spot for this activity. You can see the little circle there with the Malago Lake region near us. So through the placing of a working forest easement on properties, private lands, we aim to break this cycle of land conversion and protect the forest and prevent forest loss. So we see the Working Woodlands Trust as a solution to these large landscape scale conversions. The vision for the Working Woodlands Trust benefits the community and the environment by maintaining that forest cover and growing quality forest products. This helps sustain income over time instead of that liquidation logging cycle. The trust will also support landscape connectivity by creating pathways and connection for biodiversity to move in between habitats. And then finally, our trust is committed to the practice of ecological forestry, which meaning that we're committing to growing our community and land assets in the long term, creating that economic potential for future generations. So the Working Woodlands Trust is also very focused on land stewards. We see the Working Woodlands Trust as a solution for preserving this legacy that exists on all of your woodlots. So we allow and encourage the ecological management of forests. The easement, which I'll talk about in a little bit, is actually tied to a stewardship or management plan, and it's also tied to the deed of the property. So this legacy of stewardship and good care will remain with the property as lands change hands. We're also offering an opportunity for landowners to access the carbon market, which is novel and new, and we're still learning about it, but this is something that we're really excited to share with landowners, as it is a resource for us to make an economical future for us. And then one thing that's really important too is that we're gonna be there for stewards when lands change hands. So when a property is like passed down within a family or it's sold, we hope to be involved so we can ensure that some of these destructive practices are not taken up once land changes hands. And then finally, we also have an opportunity we're integrating an opportunity for private woodland owners to contribute to the protected area targets set by our province, set by our country. And this is something that is new and also not done very frequently on private land. So, what is a working forest easement? So, working forest or community easements are a legally binding agreement between the trust or an easement holder and the land stewards through the Community Easements Act. So much like a right-of-way or a covenant, this is attached to the deed of the property and outlines restrictions and allowances, what we call agreed practices regarding land use. So this can include property development and subdivision, natural resource extraction, such as forestry, road building, etc. This isn't an exhaustive list. So yeah, just highlighting here that the easements are tied to the deed of the property, no matter who owns it, and they exist in perpetuity. Also noting here that the actual forest management and active forestry that happens on easement properties is not something that's conducted or organized by the trust. This is something that's still very much in landowners' hands, and we kind of just want to be informed about it. Okay, so one thing to note that's pretty important is that our working forest or community easements are not the same as a conservation easement. This is probably something you've heard about before, but we actually operate using different legislation. We use the Community Easements Act, not the Conservation Easements Act, and we're entering into this kind of realm in an attempt to complement traditional conservation and conservation-focused land trusts, and really trying to fill that gap for serving land stewards who wish to continue working on their forests. So traditional conservation easements are also in perpetuity and permanent, and do not allow any kind of forestry activities on their land, and that's something that we are really passionate about maintaining. So the key difference is that we have these agreed practices, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a second, but these are to support working forests and the practice of ecological forestry on private lands. Another key difference is that land stewards who are participating in the trust actually retain ownership and kind of like our lead on the management of their own properties. So I'm sure you've heard this before, but just defining briefly of what we mean by ecological forestry is any merchantable and non-merchantable forestry activities or silviculture, climate adaptivity, and mimic natural disturbances while maintaining biodiversity features and ecological function. Okay, so a little bit about the easement process and what happens when you're interested and want to get involved. So NSWWT recognizes that woodlands offer many different functions to each woodland steward. We heard Bo, he does mountain biking. There's lots of different functions that can be served by a woodlot, and we do not wish to impede upon that. So one way that we're working with landowners is actually to go through this zoning process, where you can see in this image, we have the working forest zone, and that is the zone where our agreed practices are going to apply. We have a residential zone where it will not apply, and then we have a conservation zone where that is kind of your more traditional conservation area where no forestry would be occurring, and that zone there has the potential to contribute to our protected area targets. One thing to note here is that not all property will have all of these zones. It's not necessary. It is merely an exercise to accommodate these specialty uses of each individual woodlot. So you heard me say agreed practices. So this is, again, what is and what is not allowed, and this is tied into the easement. The final appendix in our easement agreement is, and it's like this exhaustive list of what is and is not allowed. So we have 3 categories of agreed practices. We have permitted, restricted, and prohibited. So permitted activities are things that you can continue to do with no communication with the trust, just kind of using your land as you would if you were hiking, trail clearing, non-commercial foraging, or motorized vehicle use on designated and existing roads. The restricted activities are really where the trust is going to start getting involved. They require a 60-day notification period to us before commencing, and this is really where a lot of the forestry activities are going to happen. So this is harvesting, new road construction, or restoration projects like planting. And then we have prohibited activities, and these are the activities that I kind of mentioned earlier that we're really trying to prevent and stop this cycle of forest loss. So this is subdivision, liquidation, or unsustainable harvesting, or new residence construction. So this is a little list of what we might be looking for folks who might be interested. So we have a requirement currently of folks who have 200 forested acres, so properties that are 200 acres or more. We would like these properties to comprise of 50% or more mature forest, so over 60 years. We've had some questions about, does it have to be a working forest, or can it be in a natural state? The answer is yes to both. And then some of the things that are extra special to us, or we will work together to get, is an FSC certified forest management plan. So this is something that's required for the access to the carbon market, and I am going to talk about that in a second. So if you don't have a management plan or it's not FSC certified, you can work with us to update or get one. It'd be great if a property adds to contiguous forested landscape, if it's near other protected areas. Minimal human structures and buildings is a plus, but not a requirement. And then the presence of wildlife or special habitat features. So species at risk, vernal pools, special habitat features is something that we're definitely interested in as well. So how do we pay for this? So you may or may not know easements are an expensive thing to uphold. Long-term monitoring, which is something that the trust is committed to do for every signed easement, is expensive. And the cost of the endowment is largely dependent on the actual size of the property, as well as the risk for infraction. So we have a special calculator that can kind of help us come to this number, which is $100 an acre for an endowment. So yes, this cost includes the monitoring, site visits, at least annually, and as well as the site visits required to get our baseline documentation conducted, and then also the potential liability for negotiations and legal defense should it come to that. So one way that we are going to be funding this, the endowments, is through a carbon program. So carbon developers only want to do very, very large area projects, and so it makes it an exclusive opportunity. What the trust is going to do, what we are doing, is facilitating an aggregated carbon project. So we're going to pool landowners together to reach a 10,000 acre pool, which is kind of the minimum to get into the carbon market. And then we were going to share in the profits of this carbon project. We are working with a third party, so they, our carbon developer is going to market and sell the credits. We kind of just need to put it together and hand it off to them. If only it was that simple. So yeah, the land steward and the trust both have, have a carbon agreement within us. It's attached to the easement document, and the carbon agreement exists over a 40-year term. So that's kind of the next slide here a little bit. So we anticipate 40% of the total carbon value will go to the endowment fund. That is the fund that will pay for the maintaining and upholding of the easements. We have 20%, which is our admin cost that goes directly back to the carbon developer. And then we anticipate that there's going to be a 40% payout to the landowner. We're also looking into other options for landowners who aren't interested in the payout to donate back to the trust for like actual property acquisitions for the trust, or to donate to the conservation or Mi'kmaq-focused land trusts. Another program that we've got going on is a special hemlock conservation program. So this is a smaller program. We're only actually treating about 600 acres on private lands, but it is an opportunity for landowners who have exceptional hemlock stands. So think old growth, think high carbon stands to receive treatment with a free or included easement. So yeah, it covers the cost of HWA treatment and the costs associated with the easement. So this might be a survey, it's the endowment, or management plan if you don't have one. Just to note that this complementary HWA treatment is something that's only going to come after signing an agreement or an easement. And then these treated areas will also be in that kind of conservation zone category where where they will be able to contribute to our protected area targets. So if you have a woodlot with old growth hemlock, we'd be really interested to talk to you about it and see if you would be interested in this program. So you might be interested in where we are now. So our current enrollment, we have 2 letters of intent signed. So this is, I mean, there are lots of steps of getting an easement, but our kind of first step in the process is getting this letter of intent signed with our landowners. So we have 2 signed for a total of 324 acres. We have another 8 in negotiation phase. And we're always looking for more folks, especially in Central, especially in the East. So on our onboarding properties, we're conducting baseline assessments and starting to tweak our carbon inventory methodology. We're also applying for a charitable status application. Excuse me. And this will allow us to receive land donations and also access an early operated eco-gift program, which is kind of more of a financial incentive program for private landowners to get involved in conservation. And then our final kind of big goal is to reach that 10,000 acre pool for our carbon project by the end of 2025. So if you are interested, these are some things that you might like to think about. We would love your contact information and your PID of that kind of 200 plus property. I guess to note that it doesn't have to be one property, it can be multiple PIDs that equal 200. Yeah, we'd love to see your management plan if you have one. And some things to prepare for would be an evaluation and kind of site visit by NSWWT to see if our values are aligned. Completing and maintaining boundary lines is really important. Thinking about the land use zoning, if you are considering an easement, where would you like your kind of residential plot to be? Is there an area that would be eligible for a conservation zone? Future building sites, this kind of thing. The zoning exercise is a really important exercise to think about the future of your land. And then thinking about procuring a management plan, and then of course reviewing our agreements with your lawyer. That's something that we'll advise people to do at every opportunity. So I think that's it. Thank you very much, everybody.